Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm Michael LeBlanc, your host. The Voice of Retail is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada, and it's presented by Hale, a performance marketing partner trusted by brands like ASICS, Sage, and Orange Theory to scale with focus and impact. Sebastian, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm very happy that we're doing this. Thank you so much for your very kind invitation and also to be here doing this in person.
Well, I am thrilled to be able to have the opportunity. I don't often come down and the schedules coordinate that I actually get to meet someone in person and get them on the mic in person. So that's an extra bonus for me, and I think also for the listeners, because you're a gracious host, and we're sitting here at Holt Renfrew headquarters adjacent to your Bloor Street store. So it's fantastic to be here. So let's start with a little bit about you. Tell us about yourself, how you became you, and what you do for a living.
Okay, so maybe I'll start with where I come from. So I'm originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina, which I always say that first because then when you hear my very charming accent, then you connect the dots. I only learned English when I was in my early 20s. So
Wow.
You may need to upload the subtitles,
I don't think so.
the transcript later.
I don't think so.
So I was born in Argentina. I grew up there until I was in my mid-20s. I studied accounting and business management. And
were you always interested in business? Was it a family thing? What got you interested? People choose different paths, arts, sciences, math, whatever. What put you down that path?
So it took me a little while to discover it, but my dad was an entrepreneur, and for a period of time I worked with him when I was in my teenage years. And there was something that I found very interesting about. And because my dad was an entrepreneur, I was interested in being able to learn how to help my dad because he didn't have professional training. He was just doing the best he could based on what he learned. And so that was one of the reasons. And then over time, I discovered that I really wanted to run a business and I wanted to be really good at it. It wasn't just a question of running a business. I wanted to be one of the best.
Right.
And so this is how I ended up studying business. For at the beginning, in Argentina, it's quite common for people to go to university in the evenings and work during the day. So I was working for a small oil and gas company as an intern, working full-time though, for a year and a half when I was in my early 20s. And then I started working for Deloitte as an external auditor, also working in the day, studying at night.
Right.
And so by the time I was 23, I had become a professional accountant, and I had 3 years experience already. So by the time I did my second degree in business management, I had almost 6.5 years experience, and I was already professionally qualified. So it was an amazing way to start. And then what happened is I wanted to learn English. So I had gone to England to learn English while I was studying, and then I loved it so much that I wanted to go back. And I went back to do a master's degree in international finance. And when I went back, I then stayed because I got a job with Alexander McQueen, also in finance. And that's how I got into.
Was that sometimes retail has been described as the accidental career. People find themselves in retail. Others have a passion for it from the beginning. Did you take that job because it was a great job, or because you liked the brand and wanted to get into the retail side, or was it just a mix of both?
Well, first of all, the job was in finance, so I was the financial controller for Alexander McQueen, and I was super interested in the fashion industry. I thought it was very glamorous and very interesting and very dynamic. And I was also very excited to be able to work in London because it was my first job outside of Argentina.
Right.
And so that's really the reasons why I wanted to join. And since then, I worked in the luxury industry for all this time. So I started there in 2003, and so I've been working in the industry for 22 years. So today I am president and CEO of Holt Renfrew. After my first job at Alexander McQueen, I had multiple roles with Net-a-Porter, with Burberry, first in Spain, then in the UK. Then I moved to Asia, and I lived in Hong Kong for a department store based in Hong Kong, but also with stores in mainland China. And then I came here to Canada in the middle of the pandemic to run Holt's.
Right. And we're going to get to that later, your kind of observations both then and now about Canada and retail in Canada. But let's first talk for the listeners, as I have listeners around the world. Certainly Canadians would be more than familiar with Holt Renfrew, and if you're in the luxury retail business anywhere in the world, you would know of it. But just for those who may not, tell us a little bit about the brand, the scope and scale, and what makes you remarkable.
Holt Renfrew started as a fair shop in Quebec City in 1837. And so, it's obviously proudly Canadian, mainly because it started because Canada was a country. So it's been here for a very long time. And obviously it changed and evolved over the years, but that's how it started. In 1987, the Weston family acquired the business. And over the years, they really made it a very iconic luxury fashion business in Canada.
Right.
And it is a very loved and iconic brand today. It also today is the largest luxury retailer in Canada. We employed directly and indirectly under 3,000 people. We have an online business, and we also have 6 shops in key cities. We have 3 shops here in Greater Toronto area. We have 1 shop in Montreal, 1 in Calgary, and 1 in Vancouver. And
the Montreal one, that was Ogilvy, Holt Renfrew collab. Not really a collab, but not even a joint venture, but the branding kind of came together over time, right?
Yeah, so we wanted to expand our space in that city, and there was an opportunity to take the space that the old Ogilvy occupied. But because this building and this brand was so iconic, we wanted to protect it. And so we acquired the building and we renovated it. We expanded the space that we wanted to expand into, but also we protected and co-branded Holt Renfrew as Holt Renfrew Ogilvy.
This is such a savvy decision because it's really close to the heart of a lot of Montrealers. And Montreal is an interesting city, kind of as a side note, right? You've got St. Catherine Street where it is transformed in many different ways, and now you've got this new development, Royal Mount, that is established with Mr. Lufty, and what an interesting city, and it's changing so much. It's a very dynamic city. Do you get to Montreal very often?
Oh, absolutely. I go at least 5-6 times a year.
Yeah.
And I know Andrew, and I know a lot of the people in the city, and it's, as you say, very dynamic.
Yeah.
It's also very different to many other cities. I mean, in general, I find each city here in Canada is very diverse and completely different to each other. But Montreal has a very European culture in the sense that people, absolutely love living. And they're, they like going to dinners, they like dressing up, they like, just living. And in that respect, it's very, very interesting to go there.
We're going to talk about Canadian consumers now. It's funny when people say the Canadian consumer, because as you've no doubt experienced, we're a vast geography of land, but also, like many countries, the consumer in Quebec is different from Calgary, is different from Vancouver. So you land here in the middle of COVID. So that's a weird way to come to a new job, because you're like, what is this country like? You're not quite sure. Everybody was, trying to do different things. But, tell us what your thoughts were, I guess then a bit, because your first impressions, but it was a kind of a strange time. And, stores are closed. That's a strange time to take over a retail business. But then what are your impressions now, and how do you think about the Canadian market, and both in the context of your business and the context of, the rest of the world? It's completely different. Quebec is a little more like Europe and South America a little bit, or, Calgary's a little bit like retailing in Minnesota some days, or, how do you think of it?
So, first of all, I was a little bit familiar with Holt Renfrew and with the Canadian market because I had come here before. When Nordstrom opened in Vancouver, the existing management at the time had invited me to come to the opening. And so I went to that, and obviously I visited the market. And obviously from the outside, I was seeing Holt Renfrew, was basically a leader in fashion, beauty, and lifestyle product offering, which is what we do today still.
Yeah.
And so at the time, I thought it was an amazing opportunity because I thought it was an iconic brand, very well established, and joining it at the time of disruption and change would give a burning platform to be able to continue to make changes and ensure that the company was relevant for the future.
Yeah.
And so obviously at the beginning I actually started from Hong Kong because I wasn't able to come to Ghana for a period of time. Then eventually I managed to find a way to come. And so when I eventually came, I had to obviously self-isolate first. Then I managed to go out and visit some of the stores. I had the perspective there was a lot of potential, but at the same time when I came in, I learned that the market was very, very quite diverse. Each city was very different. Even within GTA, Mississauga, where you live, is different to downtown Toronto, is different to Midtown, is different to Yorkdale. I was really keen to learn how each market was and really to get to understand, what was the community that made up the market. And you see then the influences. You see, a European influence in Montreal, for example, a very significant Asian influence in a place like Vancouver.
Sure.
So, there's a lot of different influences in each market. So that was one thing that I learned that I thought was very important. And going back to your point, one of the things I looked at, you asked me about what made Holt Renfrew remarkable. One of the things that I was keen to learn and help the company do was to continue to evolve, because I thought that that's what made it remarkable at the time. Is a company that starts in 1837 that is still a leader, clearly has the ability to change, evolve, learn, and adapt.
And continue to survive, right? I mean, there's been... my friend Phil Waba from Fortune magazine calls Canada sometimes the Bermuda Triangle of international and U.S. retail. Of course, it's overstated because there's been many successful international retailers here, but it is the challenge, right? Many businesses have come and for various reasons. Sometimes it's just challenges in the homeland and they just have stretched too far. But it is a complex operating market as well. The first observation I hear often from executives is the diseconomy of scale, like the vastness, from moving goods from place to place is quite different. But the other thing they start to talk about is the proximity to the giant U.S. market for good and ill. You've got customers who can just get on a plane and go shop. It's not, you have you don't have a captive audience in a very, in a luxury segment. You have people who can move around. So it creates kind of a unique operating environment, yeah?
Plus the point that I was making about how different each community is in the different cities.
Yeah.
And so one size doesn't fit all, it goes back to your point about these economies of scale. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I think made Holt Renfrew remarkable and still makes it remarkable, and that's the reason why not only survives but is thriving, is the fact that Holt Renfrew has always focused on building and nurturing relationships with every stakeholder for the long term.
Yeah.
And that really is what has made a big difference in our ability to navigate all of these different changes that are coming from different angles. It's not just one thing or the other. There's multiple things happening.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was, I think, why I joined and what excited me about the business. And obviously, as I got to learn the business, I realized that because of all of these these things that were specific to the market, I realized that it was actually very difficult to win in Canada. Yep. And it was also very competitive. There's a lot of different competitive forces at play, not just in the multi-brand space, but there's also a lot of investments going into standalone branded shops.
Yep.
There's also a lot of investments going into malls. You talked about Royal Mount. There's also Oak Ridge in Vancouver.
Yep.
Those are multi-billion, multi-year investments.
Well, you got in Canada, you often have the big pension funds who are owning the big malls, whether it's Oxford or whoever, and they have such a long vista. They take a big swing perspective on where they're going to invest and how, and they're patient money. I guess I call them patient money. You might call them something different. That's what I think of them as.
And so all of these things, have an impact on the business, and you have to adapt and fine tune your strategy and the way you execute to take into account all of those things. So I guess that's a very long answer to your question.
No, it's fascinating.
We'll be right back after these messages. The Voice of Retail is brought to you by Hale, the partner behind some of the fastest growing DTC and retail brands in North America. Hale is recognized for senior teams who cut out the noise and keep their focus on what matters most: growth. Their approach is based on outcomes, not hours. They are selective with who they partner with, bringing speed, accountability, and a clear strategy to every engagement. Paid media, content, performance, all of it connects directly to real results. That's why brands like A6 Sage and Orange Theory choose Hail to help them scale. Learn more at wearehail.com.
Let's pivot a little bit and talk about your observations of the global luxury retail business and retail in general. From when you first, a two-part question. So when you first started your career to now, what are the things that strike you as the most different from an operator's perspective? And then in the years you've been here in Canada, I mean, change happens pretty quick. It's happening quick right now. But first of all, like between when you started your career and today, what are the things that strike you as this is materially different than it was when I began?
Well, there's many, many things. Obviously, I started a long time ago. And I would say things that come to mind that are different are this trend to going direct to consumer, which is really enabled by digital technologies and the ability to communicate with the consumer directly through digital. And obviously digital as well, especially digital marketing, I find has had a tremendous impact in the way we do business today versus 20, 25 years ago.
Sure.
Obviously, digital had an impact on everything. It's also how you sell, how you serve, how you operate. So digital really is underpinning all companies. Obviously, depending on their muscle, but to a certain extent, every company is digital empowered today and digital enabled.
Yeah.
I think more recently, I think specifically talking about luxury. The luxury sector has grown exponentially over the years, but it's been very strong. It's navigated the global financial crisis in 2008. It also navigated through the pandemic. And part of the reason is that we had low interest rates. And as a result of that, what you have is if you have low interest payments, therefore, that releases amount of money for you to spend in other categories.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of the reasons why the luxury industry has flourished over the years.
We were talking, Steve Dennis and I on Remarkable Retail, we were talking to president of the LVMH group, so the house of brands, so he oversees that. And one of his philosophies, he was optimistic about North American luxury because he says, he feels like shoppers will start to shop like Europeans. In other words, they'll save money. They value a luxury good more. They'll buy one handbag, not 3 or 4. And he maybe was being optimistic about the size, the direction of the market. But do you sense any of that from your customer, that there's a more, I don't know if I call it sophisticated, but a different approach to the categories and the goods that you sell? A little more, whether it's sustainability or whether it's just an ethos. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think that has changed. And partly it's because the customer doesn't have a choice. So if you have, not only luxury good prices have increased in the last few years after the pandemic, but everything has increased, including interest rates.
Sure.
So as you have to, if you have an amount of money that is discretional, and then part of it goes to interest payments, and the other part goes to travel, including hotels and flights, and transfers and food and beverage and experiences, then what's left for luxury goods is probably smaller today. And therefore, I think customers have become a lot more discerning as to what they're going to buy. Having said that, I think even though there's some generic trends in terms of saying, for example, people are investing more in investment pieces. So brands that have, brands like Hermes or Brunello Cucinelli that are, very famous for having top quality, timeless pieces, timeless investments. Yeah. There's also still a desire for fashion, but because there's less money, there's more polarization in who's winning. So you have brands like Miu Miu doing super well, many other brands are not doing so well.
Right.
Then you have...
We just were talking to the CMO from Todd's, who wanted to say hi and said she loves the people at Holt Renfrew, by the way.
Yeah, no, we have a phenomenal relation with them.
And she, it was interesting because she said, as people start to make decisions about what they're going to wear and be more discerning, the influence of social media, when I think about the past 5 years, I see a couple things, but one of them is the rise of social media. You may or may not be conducting a lot of digital commerce, as in direct-to-consumer goods going from one place to another, but the influence of social media and that image That's got to play a big role in how you and the team think about marketing the brand and marketing your business, right?
Completely. I mean, so a couple of things. I mean, first of all, customer behaviors are changing, to your point, and so you have different levels of this how people are choosing to buy. There is an aspect that has become more relevant now that there's less money available for this segment, which is the idea of the concept of luxury in itself, which is that it's potentially less about buying an expensive item, but more about buying something that you covet.
Right.
Something that may not be expensive, but you don't find it in high quantity. Say the Labubu effect, that people want it. It's very, very inaccessible, but in a way it's a little luxury. And so you have a lot of brands like that. Schemes, you have Mijuri, you have Fear of God, you have many brands that are not widely available that do something incredible.
Yeah.
And so there's a value equation there. There is not just the price, but it's also the ethos of the brand and so on. And one of the things that we borrow from a lot of those brands as an inspiration is to, and I would argue is one of the reasons why we've been successful as a company, is we basically see Holt Renfrew not so much as a house of brands, but as a branded house. And for us to operate as a brand, we had to be very clear about who we were and what we stood for. And so, we started communicating a lot more effectively, why we exist, which is to empower self-expression and ignite positive change. We communicated a lot more how we operate, which is through our values. And then, we happen to sell fashion and we happen to sell beauty and lifestyle. We started selling fair. We no longer sell fair, and we may change over time. But why we do it and how we do it is not changing. And this is...
So the strategy remains... As someone described to me their strategy is frozen, but the tactics are very nimble.
Exactly.
Like we exist to do the following things. We think we have this place in the market. This is how we're going to serve customers. But how we do that on any given day, year, or month is going to change, right?
So to your question about the impact of social media and all of this, what we realize is that if you're clear about who you are and what we stand for and what our values are, we started connecting with people through shared values versus just because we had a particular brand or a particular category. And that is, I think, a key reason why we've been successful and we are being successful.
Fantastic.
We're doing business with people less because of what we sell, but more about who we are.
About who you are. One of the changes that's happened in the last 5 years particularly is the brands themselves that you would partner with have themselves taken a much more aggressive, whether it's physical or other kind of presence in the market. Do you see that it's going to raise, just circling back to what you're saying about a market that's expanding, is that helpful to bring the overall market up, that many brands are now in the high mile? You look at a street like Bloor Street or wherever you want to look, that, you have brands, you have some of the brands, they have their own flagship stores. Does that lift all boats, so to speak, in your perspective?
I think it depends on the market. In some cities, the market is not big enough to have so much offer. In some markets, it works fine.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I think we see benefits on having the brands have their own stores, because they become more top of mind in that particular community. The brand is able to express the brand in its full potential because they have the space, they have the categories, they have they have the service, they have everything, the packaging.
Yeah.
And but I think where we win, and we need to continue to win, is in ensuring that the customer that shops with us continues to shop with us.
Right.
And not because we have the brand or the other brand, but because of the relationship that we have with them.
So that's the hard work for the marketing and the merchants and the CRM or which teams, is to make sure that, we're with you. You can choose many brands, but primarily it's the relationship we have with you that's why you should come back here.
Yeah, and as you say, it's a team effort. I would say the most important component in that team is really the team in the shop floor.
Yeah, yeah.
The team who actually interact with the customer on a daily basis is really the most important one. And the way we see ourselves in the management team and all the supporting functions is we are enabling those people to ensure that they can have a really great interaction every time.
One of my early mentors said, just remember, there's no cash registers in head office.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It happens
We
on
don't bring the
store
food
floor.
to the table. This is what the retail teams do.
That's right.
And so our job is to ensure that they are successful.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, we've been talking almost just over 20 minutes. We haven't said the words AI yet. We can't spell the word retail, it seems, without talking about AI. And I wanted to ask you really quickly 2 questions. One is, the obvious solution, many retailers and businesses are using AI to be more productive and more efficient. So get your perspective on that, how it fits in the organization. But more retailers are starting to turn their minds to how consumers are using it. And I'm seeing numbers that are just shocking, like the use of consumers using AI and then trusting it, which is really baffling a little bit to me. Like in the 80s and 90s, people say, I see it as a trusted friend. How did you even come to that conclusion? But, so just from 2 perspectives, are you positive about the impacts overall of AI at Holt Renfrew in the short and long term? And then second, are you starting to think about, now we got another intermediary between us and the customer. They're using chat or they're using some other AI tool between us and them. Oh yeah, now we got to work through that now.
I think I'm going to stay away from predicting, the impact of AI in the long term because I honestly don't know. I mean, it's potentially so transformational that I think being able to predict what's going to happen in the long term is very difficult. I'll let people like Elon Musk and people like that to they probably have a much more informed opinion than me.
Sure.
What I will say though is obviously AI has very important implications today for us and for any retailer. Starting with the fact that people are interacting with AI from the discovery stage already, so they're not even going to websites.
Yep.
So for media publishers, this is a big problem because they're no longer visiting the site, they're skipping it altogether. So how we show up in that discovery process is very important, and that we need to change and evolve with how the customer is evolving. Then there's obviously implications in the short term in terms of how AI can help us serve the customer, sell and serve. So in some cases, people may want to self-serve, in which case, we can help with AI make that process a lot more personal and a lot more efficient and a lot more effective. In other cases, they may want to have a real person helping them. So how we think about this is we think about helping that person through AI or with AI be more successful in serving the customer. And so we have a lot of tools that we're deploying for our own teams.
Oh, great.
To find information about the customer, or give them ideas of what the customer might like, but not necessarily expose that information directly to the customer. We expose it to our own teams.
I feel sometimes when I was running CRM at Hudson's Bay, we used to feel it's like an arms race because the customer would be aware, they'd walk into the store, and sometimes more aware than the associate. This is a big store, lots of brands, so how do we arm the associates to kind of keep up with the customer? I think we're in that kind of, how do we put that presentation layer with the associates doing their amazing work, but empower them to be one step ahead of the customer, Let me, last question for you. Let's turn our thoughts to leadership. And I want to talk about your lessons and thoughts on leadership, both for people in your role, leading retail enterprises, but also people who aspire to a role like yours to be a leader in retail.
I've had, multiple learnings over the years. And one of the things that I constantly go back to is that leadership is more about others than about you. And, I find leadership work is much more indirect in that respect. And it comes back to some of the things we were talking about earlier in terms of enabling others to be successful, helping others be the best they can be, helping them, find what makes them tick and get them to be better and better at that.
Right.
And really much less about you. And obviously when it comes to to your own kind of skill sets as individual is really constantly going back to the idea of not managing and leading and keeping, your incredible abilities to manage a check.
Right. A bit of humility, perhaps. Lead with a bit of humility, perhaps.
Exactly. And also, it's not just humility, but it's also, I find the temptation to do it yourself is always there. because, I find that people get to leadership positions after being great managers.
Right.
And so it's always easier to get it done yourself than getting it done through a team. But
or perhaps you think you're in the role you're supposed to have the answers, right? I mean, you're like, I got here because I know the answers, so I should demonstrate that I know all the answers.
And this is the way humility comes there. Because, sometimes you may have a better answer, but if you want the team to do the job, then you need to let them find the answer, and otherwise there's no engagement. Yeah. So that's, I think, one of the key lessons for me, and I really love that. The reason why I do what I do is I love seeing people learn, grow, and develop. Is the reason why I work.
Fantastic. Now, you started in the numbers side, the accounting side. Really, you're from there. Is that a great path, do you think, for folks who aspire to a leadership role? I mean, typically you can be a merchant, you can be a marketer, you can be an operator, or you can be a finance person. It's all routes are the same. And what's your advice about how to build a career that gets you leadership roles in this wonderful industry?
First of all, I typically don't like giving advice because I find sometimes it can be patronizing, especially if you don't know the other person. I'm sure there's a lot of different people in your audience, so I don't want to be patronizing. But I will share what worked for me.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that worked for me is I've always tried to really figure out why I had this amazing energy in the morning that made me do something or made me spend an inordinate amount of time on doing something that I really loved, and I couldn't explain why. If you will, it's just finding out what your calling is. That invisible energy that is the most powerful thing there is one thing that really worked for me. And for me, it was this idea of leading. I think the background, you asked me about accounting and business. I think it helps to know numbers. Yep. Absolutely. I don't think it's the only path for a leadership role. It depends. You can have a leadership role of a function and not lead a whole company. For people who want to lead a company, what worked for me again is to go through the motions and not take any shortcuts and try and be experiencing different parts of the business. Over the years, I worked in digital, I worked in retail, I worked in marketing, I did HR work, I did finance work, I did logistics work, I did legal work, I did internal audit, external audit, and every little thing helped over the years to have a better understanding of how a company works and how you can help the people who lead those teams be successful. So I think that's obviously a key consideration. And then the other thing is, if anyone aspires to be a leader, I think this idea of really wanting to enable others, I think is really key. Because as I said, in the end, it's less about you and more about, seeing others succeed.
So you've had a great run here, 5 years, but your time is coming to a close at Holt Renfrew. We're going to miss you, by the way, and so
please stay in touch. I'm going to miss everyone as well, but I will definitely stay in touch.
What's next for you? What's next in your
First of all, I'm in the process of moving to Europe because I have most of my family based in either UK or Spain. I still have some family in Argentina and in the US, but I think a lot of the family are in Europe, so I find that being based there at this point in time is important. And what I'm going to do next, I think I have some ideas, and I'll be able to share more details very soon, but I will definitely be working in the industry, and I hope we can continue to talk. Maybe we talk again in the near future.
Oh, fantastic. Well, congratulations on all your success, and as I said, we're going to miss you here in Canada, but we certainly benefited from your leadership and skills. I know Holt Renfrew has. So congratulations again, and thanks for taking the time to sit with me.
No, thank you, and I want to take the opportunity to thank people like you and everyone in my team and my colleagues and everyone in the communities, because the success of the company is not just me. I think we all work very hard to make Holt Renfrew successful, so I just want to thank everyone for everyone's support.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.